Me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
Okay, so I actually have two ghost stories that are taking place like 15 years apart, but they're actually intertwined in a weird way. So I'll describe this. So the first and the more recent one was in 2012 and 13. Me, my dad, my brother, and my sister moved into a house in Seabrook, Texas. That's very close and near the water. So Seabrook is near Kima, which is along the Gulf Coast. Like the Kima Boardwalk is a worldwide tourist destination, and we're like 6 miles from the NASA Space Center. Anyway, so we, to sum it up shortly, we're actually starting to see the ghost of a conquistador in the house. And you wouldn't see like a full body apparition. What I personally would see, and I'm kind of showing you the corner of my room up there, is you would see his head come through the corner of the ceiling. And it was like this horrific color of like a weird glowing orange. It was bizarre, and it didn't appear like it wasn't like an everyday thing. It was very periodically, maybe once a month, every few weeks, you would see his head appear. Well, and he definitely was a conquistador. He had the helmet, he had like the beard and like the, curly whatever mustache thing, and he just would like look down and just look very angry at you. And there was this one time where my sister actually took a picture of me with her camera. She was like in eighth grade and got a brand new camera, and my head completely vanished in the picture. And my dog Panda, rest in peace, Panda. He was a Shih Tzu. You knew the head was going to appear in my room because that's usually where it would appear. Um, because he would start to growl at the corner of the ceiling when it would happen. It wasn't like super terrible or crazy or weird. It was bizarre. And there was this one time where me and my sister, my parents are divorced. Me and my sister were telling our mom about it. And she was sitting down in the living room, and where the couch was, the living room, so the kitchen was like this, and there was an L-shaped wall, and the living room was right here, and it was all open. It's like a big open L, basically. She's sitting at the corner of the couch right there, and right as we tell her about that, you start to hear a man inside the house whispering in Spanish, but it didn't sound like the Spanish that we're used to in Texas, like Mexican Spanish. It was sounded like old world Spanish, and it was very bizarre. It was weird, and like his voice almost like echoed too. It whispered and it echoed like it was carrying on, like it was echoing in a canyon. It was crazy. So that didn't make sense to us, right? We didn't tell any friends really about it. My sister's friend came over one time and got trapped inside my bedroom. That freaked her out. The doors closed. There was nobody there. It was just her and my sister at the house, and the doors shut closed, and she couldn't get out. She was like freaking out. But so here's the thing. This is the crazy part. So I found out through research that the conquistadors shipwrecked all the way from here, the Seabrook Kima area, to Galveston, Texas. And that's about 45 miles down. There was a fleet of them that came here in the 1500s, a fleet of 300 men, and only about 9 or 10 made it back alive to Spain, like almost a decade later. Most of them, from what I understand from the history that I read, most of them either died, they stayed with some of the Native American women and had children, or they were cannibalized by I think it's called Karankawa Indians. They're extinct, they're no longer around. They went extinct, I think, in the 1800s. So years later, when I discovered that, like 10 years later, a year or two ago, when I discovered that, it made so much sense. I was like, oh my God, they shipwrecked all the way from Seabrook to Galveston 500 years ago. I was like, I bet you anything there was a body of one of them underneath that house or near it somewhere on the property, probably deep in the ground, but there was a body there, or what's left of a body. So anyway, let me tell you the crazy thing, because I mentioned the Karankawa Indians. So in the early 90s, late 90s, like the year 2000, we lived in this house in the same city in Seabrook, which was about 3 miles away from the house where I just talked about the conquistador ghost. When me and my older brother Sam were little, I was about 4 and 6. He was, and I was 4, he was 6, and then we lived there for a couple of years. So 5 and 7, you get the point. The 2 year difference. We used to see the ghost of a Native American in the closet, and we would call him the white man because, he was like as white as a fluorescent light bulb. Not so much white in terms of ethnicity. Like, we just called him the white man, and we were terrified of him. Well, I remember this one time I was about 4 years old or 5, and I fell out of the bunk bed. I was on the bottom bunk. And I looked underneath the bed, and this is late at night, waking up in the middle of the night, and I see the face of a Native American man, but like where his eyes are, the eye socket, it's all completely black, and it's like it's black right here too. So it's like all black, and then it's just black going down. But even though there was no eyes or anything, I could tell he was just looking at me, and it was just his head. And it's like the floor underneath the bed was like a black void that went on forever, like it went down. And his face was like glowing a weird color. And I just remember screaming bloody murder when that happened. And my dad came into the bedroom. He took me into the master bedroom to sleep with my mom in the bed, and then he slept in the bunk bed. Well, I asked my dad about that like 18 years later, and he said he remembered that night. He said he was scared. He said he just remembered keeping his eyes closed, but he could hear and feel that there was actually someone or something walking around the room. And he said he just kept his eyes closed the whole night and didn't open them or anything. Well, how does that tie in with the conquistador story? I find out years later that in Seabrook, Texas, there's a trail called Independence Trail, which is along Highway 146, and a bunch of Karankawa Indians were massacred along that trail in the 1800s. So, right, who expects to live anywhere in the United States and to have the ghost of a conquistador haunting your house? And then Native American ghosts, which ironically is kind of connected to the conquistador ghosts because they shipwrecked and some were cannibalized by them and others married and had women and all that stuff. But yeah, that's my crazy ghost story.
When I was a sophomore in high school, my friend Laura and I made a Ouija board. And you may be asking yourself, base question, I'm going to answer it now. Why did y'all do that? Short answer, my mom is really strict and wouldn't take us to go buy one, so I did what any teenager would do, and I made one, not thinking it was going to work. So we made a planchette, we made a board, and we did the whole shebang. We shut the blinds in broad daylight, we shut off my lights in broad daylight, we lit a candle, we had this like little table, it's actually in the corner of my room right now, that we played this on, and we started messing around. And we were asking questions that we both knew the answer to, and I was convinced Laura was pushing the planchette, and she was convinced I was pushing the planchette. And eventually, I'm like, I'm so sick of this because she's just messing with me that I thought it was a good idea to ask a super far off question. And I said verbatim, and I know this is not okay now, verbatim, if you're so real, what is my grandfather's middle name? And to many people, it's like, why is that so what? To my knowledge, there's only 3 people who know his middle name, and it is me, my biological dad, and my brother. And he had passed away 3 years prior to this. Like, it wasn't even on his obituary. And what do you know? The effing planchette is just sitting there on the board, like I said it was going to. And I was like, I effing knew it. Like, I knew she was pushing around. And right as I'm about to verbalize this to her, the freaking planchette starts moving. And he has 5 letters in his middle name, and the first letter matched it, second letter matched it, and on its way to the third letter, I threw my hands up. I threw my hands up because it was too much, it was too concrete, and I did not like it, and it finished spelling it with Laura's hands on it. And I immediately was like, we have to say goodbye, and we did. We blew out the candle, I turned on all the lights, and we just went outside to get our mind off of it and take pictures. It is important to note, I remember shutting the effing lights off in my room. We're taking pictures, we're doing whatever, and all of a sudden we hear 3 knocks from inside of a window. And they're loud enough for us to hear outside. So my backyard is set up like this. We were taking pictures against the greenery in my backyard. This is the fence with all the greenery on it. This was my room with the window facing out towards the greenery that I lived in at the time in the basement of this house. And I was like, that's weird. It's probably my mom. She probably like knows that we were messing around. And we just went on with our day. And it happened again. Knock, knock, knock. Just like that. And I am so ticked off because it's scaring me that I go through my basement door, I march upstairs, I go into my mom's room, only to find her sleeping. And I know she was sleeping because she did the when I woke her up. And I'm like, why are you messing with Laura and I? That's not funny. And she had no idea what I was talking about. And the way my blood felt in that moment, chills all over my body. My ears are so hot right now just talking about this. And I go downstairs and get Laura, and I'm like, it was my mom. I believe her that she wasn't messing with us. Whatever that was, like, I'm never doing that again. Like, I cannot express to you how scary that was for me and how much it scared me. But it gets worse. After we talk about it briefly in the living room of my basement, we go inside of my room and find all of the effing lights on. And my closet door, it's a walk-in closet in the basement, wide open with the light on. Needless to say, I have not tried to contact anything. I have not made another Ouija board. I got rid of that Ouija board, and I will never, ever, ever mess with that stuff ever again. And I also haven't let Laura come back since then, because this was not the first time that I had a weird experience with her being there. And like I was saying, I don't think I said this in the beginning, she's a very spiritually magnetic person, and we both believe that she is actually followed by 3 prominent spirits. And I wasn't comfortable with that. And everything that followed probably a month after was just not okay. So yeah, moral of the story, don't make Ouija boards.
So I lived in multiple haunted houses. I talked about it a lot on here. I have a whole series of creepy, spooky stories that y'all can listen to. But one house I never really spoke about was the house that I lived in when my son was a newborn, when I brought my son home. And I guess I never really talked about it because I had such positive experiences. Because in other houses, I've experienced some crazy things, some residual hauntings, and all types of stuff. But in that house, I called the ghosts in that house my helpers, my second hands, or my babysitters, because they really helped me out. Like, for example, they would alert me of certain things. Like, if I was in another room and like my son needed me, and if I didn't hear him, or if I wasn't awake, if I had fallen asleep, they would find ways to wake me up. And it was a normal occurrence after a while. So for example, I was really nervous, so I would stay up all night. I wanted to be awake in case the baby woke up, in case I needed to I was just really, really nervous. So like, for example, they would like make the TV glitch. So one night I'm watching a movie, the TV glitches. I'm like, maybe it's the Wi-Fi, turn it off, turn it back on. Like, nothing was working. So I'm not really too worried about it because I'm scrolling on Twitter all night. And I can hear the TV turns back on, and the guy's like, the kid, get the kid. And then it shuts off again. And I'm like, so I got up and I went in the room, and my kid had been choking and I didn't know. So just for example, but one morning, because I stayed up until the sun came up and I'm exhausted. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to get through the day. It was a lot. And I was dealing with like postpartum and things like that. So it was just a lot in that moment. And I just started to fall asleep when I could hear somebody in the hallway. And I knew, like, I'd grown accustomed to hearing the different creaks, and I could tell like where somebody was in the house or which direction they were going, if they were going to the bathroom, if they're going in the kitchen, by the creaks in the floor, because it was an old house. But I hear somebody in the hallway, and I hear my door creak open, but I don't feel I don't feel scared, and I didn't hear the front door. I didn't hear anything. So it didn't really worry me. I felt somebody sit on the side of the bed, and I was like, okay, I can go to sleep. Because to me, it felt like my babysitter has him. Like, they're going to watch him. They're going to wake me up if I need it. Like, so everything is fine. 10 years later, I'm experimenting with microdosing, just trying to work through some things and trying to understand some things and get past some things. And I was really frustrated. I was going through it, and I was like, I can't do this. I'm trying to journal. It's just not working. So I was like, I just don't want to feel the way that I'm feeling, so I'm just going to go to sleep. Cover my head, lay down. I'm going to sleep. I feel somebody walk into my room. So I'm basically crying out to my higher self, crying out to somebody giving me some sort of guidance, because I don't know what to do, and I know that I need something. So I can feel her. She feels like an older version of me. She feels like a wiser version of me. She's way calmer than me. She's way more sure. And she's telling me things. She's telling me how she just put in a lot of my worries at ease. She's telling me about my child. She's telling me about myself. And she's just telling me that it's going to be okay. And I'm like, thank you, but that's not enough. Tell me what to do. What can I do? Because there has to be something that I can do, because I feel like I'm not doing enough. I feel like I'm not doing the right things. And she's like, I know what you can do. You can go back to a version of yourself who could use the guidance that you have now. Because there's a version of you who feels hopeless the way that you feel now. So you can go help her. So I'm like, okay, immediately, like that, I'm back in that hallway. And I'd forgotten everything about that house. I'd forgotten what it looked like. I'd forgotten what just everything felt like. And I walked down that hallway, and I pushed the door open, like slowly. And I see the baby bassinet. I see the sun beaming in the room, the curtains, little details of things that I had forgotten completely. And I see just a big lump on the bed under like a comforter. And I walk up to the bed, and I sit at the foot of the bed, and I put my hand on her back, and I'm just talking to her. And I didn't really know what to say, so I'm just telling her, I'm like, he's okay, he grows up, he's beautiful. Like, I'm just telling her all the things that I felt like she may have needed to hear. Yeah. And I don't know if anybody's gonna believe that I haunted myself, but I haunted myself.